What is the absolute fastest, yeah, we are definitely not going to be friends, moment you've ever experienced with someone? My husband and I did a couples date with another couple. We went to a cafe and played a board game since we all had that in common. She was nice, but he was kind of abrasive. Towards the end of a game, my husband gets a winning setup against the other guy, but the other guy said, "If you take that move, this friendship is over." We thought he was joking. He wasn't. The wife sighed, and I felt so bad for her. I'm sure he does this frequently. My husband made his move and won the game. The other guy stormed out. Wife apologized. We told her it was very nice meeting her, and we had a good time hanging out with her, but never contacted them again. I can't imagine cutting off a potential friend because they smoke you in Chutes and Ladders, or whatever the game was. I know some guys get a little jealous or defensive or embarrassed or whatever about losing any sort of game in front of their respective partner. But come on, man, it's a board game. What are we talking about? Next story. Wife and I had recently moved to a new city. We helped one of her work colleagues and spouse move in. I think it was most of a Saturday, like 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. Load the truck, follow the truck, unload the truck. They said, thanks, and we left. Then they had a housewarming party where they invited family and other work friends, but not us. We were the only people that helped them move. Not their family, not the other work friends, just us. To add, it was 30 years ago. I don't remember all the details. They might have bought pizza for lunch, for instance. They were part of a small group of people our age at her work that hung out together. We thought this might be a way to start participating. Turned out that the work group, had known each other for a few years and so qualified as real friends. But my attitude about stuff like this, that a few hours of exercise is a small price to pay to learn that somebody isn't worth your time or effort. Next story. My friend was traveling in the same country my family lives in. I was going at the same time because my dad is sick. She just wanted to party the whole time, and when I said I came there to spend time with my mom and dad, she replied, "You just need to accept that your dad is going to die." Sent her packing from my parents' home the very next morning. We aren't friends anymore, and I'm happier for it. Psycho. What kind of logic is that? Hey, they're gonna die, so why spend time with them when you could be spending time with me, who's very clearly immortal? Honestly, you should have investigated. She might have been a vampire. Next story. Met up with friends at an area full of bars. They brought along a guy they knew from university. I met him, shook his hand, all seemed fine. Then, as we were walking to a bar, he noticed a cute girl. As we walked by, he'd said something to the girl. The girl ignored him. The guy was incensed. He starts shouting insults and calling the girl every nasty name he could muster. I told my friends that I would not be staying with them if he was there. Absolutely not. I walked away and went home. I got an apology text from the one guy who was friends with him. He never brought that guy around again. Next story. I met a girl on a friendship meetup app, and within 2 minutes of hanging out, she started bragging about how much money her fiancé earns, how nice their cars are, how much money they have saved, and how she recently bought a cheap purse for $600, all whilst asking 0 questions about my life. She then sent me videos of her spraying her indoor cats with a hose and thought it was so funny that they were hissing and scared. I already wasn't feeling her friendship, and then that solidified it for me. What a freaking turd! You know what, if you're gonna be a bad guy, but don't harass the animals, please and thank you. Also, what is this friendship app? Is there like a dating service for just hanging out with people? That's kind of awesome. I'm not lonely. Next story. Coworker said something about liking to date married men. I'm just polite enough to believe she meant men who had previously been married. She clarified, no, she meant actual, currently married men. I'm a married woman, so yeah. She later complained that I never gave her a fair chance. Female dog, what? You had a chance. You opened your mouth and said the equivalent of, I'm a terrible person and you can't trust me. Why the F would I want to be friends with you after that? Boggles my dang mind. Next story. I was seeing a girl in college. She really hated her roommate because the roommate had a boyfriend, which was totally fair because, well, yeah, it can be annoying. Then she told me, yeah, so when she goes away for a weekend, I clean the toilet with her toothbrush. I slowly backed up, grabbed my toothbrush, and started distancing myself from her real quick. Next story. It was literally my best friend from 6th grade all the way up to our first year of college. Dude was like my brother, and I can't believe I never knew it. So he had the same girlfriend throughout high school, and I'd say she was a good friend too. We all went to Indianapolis together for college. One night, while he is at work, her and I are just chilling, like we've done many times before. Then she lifts her shirt. Bruises all over her stomach. "He beats me," she said. I was immediately filled with rage to the point I punched the refrigerator. Turns out she always thought I knew and that I'd hurt her too if she said anything. It broke my heart to hear that she was scared of me because I was his friend. Called a buddy from back home. Bro drove 4 hours in the middle of the night. I distracted my friend the following morning while she and my other buddy packed her things in his truck and he took off. She waits in the neighboring apartment and I pick her up and drive her straight to her mom's house. One thing that I remember was that after maybe 6 months of being away from him, she was excited because she got her period. Apparently, he was very controlling about her diet and she had some wild hormonal imbalance. But we hung out all the time for a while, and if her stepdad wasn't feeding her, me or my mom was. This was 17 years ago. I've not been his friend since. She has been with the same new guy for over a decade now, and they're married with a son. I ran into her and her mom a month ago at a grocery store, and she's still doing good. Next story. One of my great friend's girlfriend. There was multiple things that upset me, but the final straw for me was when she came home from work, we all rented a house together, and started saying some creep scared the crap out of her at work. She starts going into the story how she's the only one in the office. She thought she was alone. There's a knock on the door, and this creepy looking man came in speaking Spanish, saying she freaked out, screamed, and kicked them out of the building. She really went into detail on how creepy this guy was and how she was afraid she was going to be attacked and all this stuff. After we asked more questions, basically her company's janitor came into the office and was trying to do his job, and she freaked out, calling him a creep and portraying him as some malicious weirdo. Just a simple, hardworking dude trying to do his job. Next story. I was getting to know someone in my neighborhood and we went on a walk. She started talking about how she and her husband were trying to adopt a baby, and I commented about how I've heard it's a pretty tough process. She said, "Yeah, we actually had one for a little over 2 years before, but we found out they had given her vaccines in the hospital when she was born, so we had to give her back." Completely skirting by the fact that anyone who feels that way about vaccines is not someone whose judgment I trust. She had a daughter for 2 years and decided that her anti-vax bullcrap was more important than any relationship, love, connection, or sense of responsibility she had built with this poor baby. The really scary part was that she told me about it so casually, like giving up a human child that had only ever known you as her mother was no different than returning a defective vacuum cleaner. Straight up sociopathic behavior. Next story. When he asked me to pay him back for my birthday gift, UPD. All right, folks, so I'm in college right now, and I've been meeting a bunch of new people I kinda wanted to be friends with. But there was this one guy I really liked. Let's call him James. For months, we were chatting, and I genuinely thought we could become good friends. And just recently, on my birthday, I was kinda sick, but still celebrated it with my family. James actually got me a gift, a Steam game I'd been wanting for ages. Fast forward about a month, we were talking like usual, and out of nowhere, he hits me up asking me to pay him back for the gift. Apparently, he blew all his pocket money. His exact words, "I don't even have money for cigarettes, but I feel like smoking." And that was the reason he wanted some cash back. Honestly, I was super disappointed in him, and now I'm keeping my contact with him to a bare minimum. I mean, of all the things, being poor with your finances and being so oblivious that you still get somebody a birthday gift because you want to be generous isn't the worst thing. It's a little embarrassing, sure, because you gotta ask for money back, but better to try and return a gift than return a kid. Yeesh. Next story. I went to a summer camp thing hosted at a college, and a few minutes after meeting my roommate, there he tells me he likes dark humor. And I said, oh yeah, some dark jokes can be funny. Then he made an essay joke about one of the girls at the camp, and I was like, oh, K. I avoided speaking with him for the rest of the time. They had boys and girls on separate floors of the dorm, and one night he got in trouble for climbing out the window into the girls' floor. Next story. Met a girl in college class. We seemed to get along, so we decided, hey, why not hang out outside of class? We were walking to grab lunch at a spot that happened to be in my neighborhood. She looks at me and seriously asks me, "Is this the ghetto?" Then proceeds to spend the rest of the walk there talking crap about poor people and saying how she's glad she grew up in a better area. Yeah, most awkward lunch of my life. Next story. My kid made friends with another kid in school. They came over, had a play date. His dad came to pick him up. Usually, when our kids make friends, we tend to get along pretty well with the other parents. This guy immediately starts talking about how much he hates liberals and loves Trump, and it all went downhill from there. I politely listened, emphasized I don't agree with all of his policies, but hey, you're entitled to your opinion. The fact that I'm very clearly an immigrant with an accent and everything seemed to sort of fly over his head. Tried to steer the conversation away from politics, but the guy just made everything about politics and how liberals and immigrants are ruining America. Not you though, man. You seem cool. Anyway, yeah, friend liberals. Made more awkward small talk until he left. I wonder how his kid is doing these days. My own kid and him ended up going to different schools not long after. Oh yes, a little awkward, a little weird, but nothing you can't handle. Actually, that'd be pretty awkward. I mean, politics in general just make everything awkward. Who brings that up on the first convo? Next story. When we went on a 2-day trip with my neighbors to a nearby city, they had a huge fight the night before and left their 3-year-old with us for the whole day because they needed to sort out their issues alone. We had to take care of their son, who's basically a stranger, mind you, all day on top of our toddler. Then my neighbors came back at dinner around 6 p.m. like nothing ever happened. Next story. Was at a rehearsal dinner for a wedding my husband was in. Got to talking to this girl I had never met before. Somehow we got on the topic of church. She should have realized my church was much less conservative than hers when I mentioned that we had a woman pastor. It took me about 5 seconds to clock that she was going to a fundy church. At one point she turns to me and says, "I think if you're a Christian, you have to vote Republican. That's what Jesus would have wanted." I responded in a very mild tone of voice, "I don't necessarily agree with that." She immediately excused herself to go to the bathroom and wouldn't come near me for the rest of the night. I thought it was pretty funny. One mild comment totally scared her off. So I guess that's the moment she figured out she wasn't going to be friends with me. Next story. Husband and I were working our booth at the farmer's market, and a couple came by and chatted with us. They were about our same age, lived in the area, and were super enthusiastic about our interests and business, just a small side hustle and homemade cocktail mixers. We exchanged numbers, and the wife called a couple days later. I thought we might be planning a hang, but she wanted me to get on the phone with her mentor. I realized immediately it was Amway. We noped right out of that situation. I was bummed because here I thought they wanted to start a friendship, but they probably cruise farmers markets looking for people who have side hustles thinking they'd be more receptive to their pitch. It's actually super gross when I think about it. Next story. Me and my wife worked with a childhood friend she had. We all became really acquainted. We attended her baby shower, helping her out with covering shifts. Then she started sharing stuff on her social media, essentially saying gay marriage should be overturned and it's unnatural. Mind you, me and my wife are lesbians, and she'd been nothing but nice to us to our face, but apparently thought our existence was disgusting. Took her off socials and haven't heard from her since. Next story. A guy I know told me he understands why Israel is bombing Gaza. He lives in a building with a lot of immigrants and their kids are rude, and they frighten him, and he would be okay with them being bombed a little. Now, that would be enough of a "you 100% have no idea what the thing you just said means, IRL, and the only merciful way to deal with it is to never talk to you again" moment, all by itself. But to end the conversation right there, here's the kicker. He lives in the same building as me. He was talking about my neighbors. Yeah, my neighbors are sweet people. Our neighborhood is not rich, but it's nice. It's peaceful. More even than the hate, it was the delusion I just couldn't respond to without some sort of medical professional to help me find the words. Next story. When I was younger, a friend and I were in a car accident. It was very bad. I was in a coma for 23 plus days and tons of broken bones. The girl who was driving came to the hospital to see me and my parents and were very upset and wouldn't let her see me. So she started telling them how much I hate them and she hopes I die so they never get to see me again. Then she came to see me when I got home and I was still in a wheelchair, learning how to speak again. The first thing she said was, "I got the worst bruise on my knee. I couldn't walk without it hurting for like a week. You got to take a nap and miss school." I looked at her and took all my mental energy, and through my surgically closed jaw, I screamed, "Get out." That was like 25 years ago, and I never spoke to her again. Next story. My wife and I did a couple's date with a friend in college and her new boyfriend of like a week. We went out for sushi. Me and my wife ordered one roll each and a roll to split and some waters. We prefer to drink water. It's not a cheap thing, but she orders one roll and asks him if we want to share one. And he says he prefers to order on the spot. Waiter comes around, he asks to go last, we all order, then he busts out an order of 2 rolls for him, 3 rolls to share with our friend, and an alcoholic beverage for him and the one for the friend. She insists it's too much, and he holds his hand up, smiles, says, "Don't worry about the cost, let's just have fun." So we eat. They end up so full they have like 2.5 rolls left over, and we had 2 more beers over the course of the chatting and eating. Honestly, he seemed pretty normal up to that point. Then they brought us the receipt. The waiter asked the usual, "Separate checks?" Dude holds his hand up and says, "That's too much work, just split it evenly." I held up my hand and said, "Actually, do me and her together," gesturing at my wife. Dude looks at me like a deer in the headlights. "Are you sure? It's going to be pretty expensive if we do it that way." I looked at him and tried not to show the shock on my face while I responded, "Yeah, I would prefer to do it this way." There was no pre-discussion about how to pay, so maybe this is just a culture difference, but he didn't talk to us for the remainder of our event. Next story. I was in Shanghai, partying with some expats who were spouses of my Chinese coworkers and firmly in the LBH, losers back home, bucket. One guy and I were hitting it off, and he kept asking me how I liked being single in China as a white guy. I kept deflecting and asking him about how he met his wife, Jing. He said, yeah, they were hooking up and he married her because she kept pressuring him, but said he was thinking he'd divorce her because he missed the bigger breasts. I told him that was horrible, and then we did not talk for the rest of the night. Next story. My husband had a group of friends from high school that we still hang out with. One of the guys went to our high school that none of us actually knew him then. He works with one of the other guys in the group, so he became part of the group just a few years ago. We went to his house for the first time for a football game, where I met his wife. She's a few years younger than me, but she also went to our high school. Her and her husband are high school sweethearts, as are me and my husband. They got married right out of high school at 18, had 3 kids over 10 years, whereas me and my husband waited until we were 25, 26 to get married and have no kids. When we were all talking, I said something about my husband was paying for something or having to split it. I can't remember which. She immediately asked, "You two don't share a bank account?" I said something along the lines of, "No, we each pay for half of our expenses but have our own accounts." She starts going on about how weird that was and then hugs her husband and says, "Thanks for being such a good provider for us," and really made a show of it. That's when I knew we couldn't be friends. I don't want to be friends with someone who's going to think we are in some kind of competition for best couple. I couldn't care less what anyone's financial situation is with their spouse. Next story. Dude has a kid my kid's age. We met at some shared hobby event and got the kids together to play while we hung out and played board games and whatnot. He got divorced, and frankly, we sided with his wife. But otherwise, he was still cool about things, so we kept hanging out. They got split custody of the kid, and there were no accusations of horribleness, they just kinda grew apart. We hung out with them both separately for a good long while. Then he meets this girl he was head over heels for in high school, and they end up together. After a while, they get an apartment together, and that's when it hits. We're planning to hang out, and everything seems fine. About a half hour before we head out to go to his place, I get the call. His girlfriend doesn't want women in her space. I can either bring my kid myself and leave my wife at home, or we can make today a wildlife day and go for a hike in the nearby state park. My wife got upset. And frankly, I don't blame her. We didn't want to cancel our kid's plans, so I took our kid to the park, and we met there as if my wife came. Told him she stayed at home the last moment because she was upset with the new rule that not even a married woman could visit their home. Next story. I watched a friend of a friend pop the nose of the homeowner's cat for something very innocuous. She was just sniffing something. It stunned me because I would never hit someone else's animals. I don't hit my own animals. I wasn't surprised to find out she was also mean and talks about people behind their backs. I made sure to not let her around my own cats. My cranky old lady Callie would bite her for that kind of stuff. Yeah, I don't know if there's a better litmus test for people other than the way they treat their animals. If you're going to disrespect the pureness of a pet, your own especially, God forbid I'd hate to see what you do to people. Next story. Neighbor wanted to introduce me to his friend at a festival we were at. Guy was head to toe in MAGA crap. Freedom shirt, some flag-filled Punisher head logo baseball hat. Talked for 5 seconds, and he somehow brought up cheap Chinese crap. It's like obviously this is your entire identity. Anyone who wears their political party like a personal brand is automatically an effing insufferable douche. Next story. College story. Lived next to a nice woman in the dorm. She had an attractive friend over to visit. I thought the vibe was good. I went back to my room and she followed me. She looked around at the 80s new wave posters I had on my walls, Police, Squeeze, Duran Duran, and said, "Wow, if you were my boyfriend, I'd never let you live like this." Vibe died right there. Too bad. Next story. Went to dinner with a bunch of friends, including someone I hadn't met before, but was part of the larger social circle. It was a casual dinner. Everyone had 2 courses and a soft drink, so we decided to split the bill evenly. There was no alcohol or extra courses to make this unfair to anyone. I dealt with the bill and told everyone they owed $18. This girl hands me 15 and I said she was short 3, and if she didn't want to split the bill, her actual total was 20. She threw the coins down at the table on me. I refused to acknowledge she exists ever since. Next story. The way I was introduced to one of the guys in a Discord gaming group I'm part of was first joining him and his mid-tirade going on about how he wishes all of us millennials, my age group, could just die so Gen Z, his age group, wouldn't have to deal with the boomers since we're nothing but detriments to society. This was in the first seconds of joining that group. I have never considered him a friend, and I barely consider him an acquaintance, since we have next to nothing in common. And the only reason I have to deal with him is when we do raid groups or other game sessions. Outside of that, I have told him that I don't want him to be anywhere near me if our group organizes an in-person meetup, which is gonna happen this year. He already tried to get me fired once in my real-life job too. And when I found out it was him, supervisor dropped his whole name when he pulled me into his office and asked me who it was, found out in that meeting when he was saying some gaming terms that he asked me to explain and that I'm very familiar with. I have been calling this guy his full name every time he hops on in voice chat, knowing full well that he absolutely hates his name. Next story. In high school, a girl befriended me and she was nice, but one time she told me that for fun, she and her friends used to throw rocks at bird nests, and they would laugh as they saw the mom bird be upset. After hearing that, it just revolted me how anyone can find amusement in harming animals for fun. I distanced myself from her, and we eventually stopped speaking together. Next story. When my daughter was in preschool and started getting invited to other kids' birthday parties, a byproduct was us getting to meet other parents in the area, which has led to some new friendships. One time it didn't was when another dad, who I just met, casually told me he thinks his 4-year-old son, thinks he's the son, can run really fast. Then said, "I told him to just wait until he gets to elementary school and he tries to raise black kids." Next story. I told her my cat was sick and couldn't go out because I was taking her to the emergency vet. She replied, "It doesn't seem like your cat's in immediate danger of death, so just take her tomorrow. I want to meet boys at the bar with you." Yeah, no, my baby girl, my cat, is the most precious treasure to me. Nothing comes before her. Next story. When a dude I was close with came back from active duty in Kuwait, I grabbed Korean barbecue with him. When I asked him how his time was over there, roughly 8 months, He just basically said a bunch of blanket racist crap about Arabs and that the sand blanks that live in Kuwait. I tried to speak reason to him and asked him if that kind of generalization is healthy. He then said something along the lines of, I wasn't there and I don't know crap about that side of the world. Although I travel a lot and have been to Middle Eastern countries and sub-Saharan countries. I tried one more time to speak some sense into him, and it was like talking to a wall. I got up before the barbecue was fully cooked, paid for the meal, told him best of luck, and walked away. Next story. I had a job a few years ago in the oil and gas industry. Part of my job involved processing new hire paperwork at job sites. Large project. I had already processed 100 new hires. We bring in a few more, and one of them sits quietly while I look over his paperwork to make sure he's signed everything, turned in I-9 documents, etc. I turn to tell him everything looks good and he can report to his foreman. He says, "Hey man, check this out." It's a picture of his girlfriend in her birthday suit. Full frontal. What do you think of that? She's effing hot, right? I just tell him, yeah, man, and make a mental note to never speak to him again. Inside the gates, refineries are a different planet. Yeah, I've known guys like this too. I really don't understand it. 1, it's immediately a betrayal of trust. 2, I don't want to see what your girlfriend likes. And then 3, it's your girlfriend. Why do you want to share that with another guy? It's like some guys who need validation from other guys to be like, hey, yeah, your girlfriend is hot. Yes, I knew it. Next story. While my wife was hanging out with her old high school friend, I was charged with occupying her friend's controlling husband, the kind of guy who doesn't like her to be alone with people he can't control. We were all parents and in our 30s by this time. With a bunch of kids running around, I suggested that the ladies stay at home with the kids, and I'd take Kevin out to a bar. The idea being that I'd keep Kevin from constantly butting in and making demands of his wife the whole time. I'm not good with small talk, but I figured I could manage a couple hours at least. I figured we'd go to a Buffalo Wild Wings or something, but the first thing he said after he closed the door in the car was that we should go to some club downtown that I'd never even heard of. I said clubs aren't really my thing. Too bad. Where are we going then? He asked. BW's, I figure. Oh, really? You sure? Yeah. And it's at this point that things escalated quickly. He's fidgeting in his seat, sighing every once in a while. I finally bite and ask, so, got any hobbies? He turns sharply toward me, and when I look over at him, he straight up says, ever F a black chick? Cue the record screech as I stopped the car. We were still in the subdivision. I knew I couldn't have heard him right, so I said, what? He grins and says that there's this black chick, his words, not mine, at the club he wants to go to, and that she does incredible things with her hips. He went on a bit more before actually noticing my reaction. At that point, he stopped, chuckled, and said, nah, I'm just effing with you. Let's go to BW's. I hated every minute of that evening and wasn't the least bit surprised when his wife caught up and divorced him. He was a dirtbag husband, a crappy dad, and overall proudly misogynistic racist piece of crap. When he died a few years ago, we didn't even go to his funeral. Next story. Went to my husband's work holiday party and met his colleague's girlfriend. We were getting to know each other, and then suddenly she said, you know, she's just one of those girls that spreads her legs for everyone, in referencing their other colleague. It was so out of left field and unnecessary. Next story. When I was hired at my current job, my now office mate was working remotely. After a few months, she came back to the office, and within 20 minutes of pleasant conversation, she managed to work her twice weekly church services and admiration for RFK Jr. into the conversation. She also uses a space heater to raise the office temp to nearly 80 degrees. I measured it at my desk. We don't get along. Next story. I remember once being at a party and I was making my rounds, meeting people and getting to know them. I introduced myself to some dude and asked, hey man, what kind of hobbies are you into? And all of a sudden this guy adopts this super weird combative attitude. He legitimately puffed up his chest a bit and closed in on me and responded with, hobbies? Hobbies? Hey, what are your hobbies, huh? And I was so surprised by this weirdo's response that I could only think to respond in good faith, so I said, Well, I'm really into hiking, photography, cooking, filmmaking, mycology, playing video games, writing, all kinds of stuff, really. And then this guy just sort of looks at his feet and says, No, I don't have any hobbies, before shuffling away. I honestly think about this interaction at least once a week. It was like he felt shame for not having any hobbies, but picking up a hobby is so easy and often free. You just have to do stuff that you're interested in, you know? Anyways, super effing weird interaction. Dude was definitely not friendship material. Ha 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 ha. Next story. We moved into our current house and one day meet one of the neighbors. She and her husband are from Germany and moved here to vote for Trump. She then throws in, unprompted, that she's not a Nazi, but her mom would drag her to all the rallies as a kid, and she was a Hilter youth. But definitely not a Nazi, but her mom was. I'm the grandson of a Holocaust survivor, so we never talked to her again. Next story. I used to work in a zone of autos in rural Arizona. I'm an older, whiter guy. Every now and then, a coworker would drop some surprisingly racist crap, hoping for me to pick it up so we could be racist buddies together. My dude, I'm in rural Arizona right now, but I'm from California. I do not share your MAGA views. Next story. I recognized a neighbor on the bus. I had been to her house for a yard sale. She was sitting close to me. I decided to chat with her, see if she was friend material. We were talking and she was touching my arm and shoulder as she laughed and made jokes. Then she said, "Did you hear about how all of the immigrants are going to be sent to Edmonton?" She whispered, "immigrants," in the way that racist people do, so they don't want everyone to hear their racism. I say immigrants in my normal volume in positive ways because I respect immigrants. I have been the outsider living in foreign countries, so yeah, not friend material. Next story. I worked very briefly with a guy that everyone at the company thought I was going to be best friends with. Same interests, hobbies, age, etc. I was the new guy, and people kept on saying, "You and Joe are going to be buddies." Anytime I was introduced to someone during my first week, I finally meet him after a month of training, and 20 minutes into talking to this guy, I realize I'm speaking to Eeyore and Eric Cartman's love child. I've never met someone whose entire personality was comprised of a selfish, evil streak and victim mentality. Everything sucked, and the world was out to get to him, so he was going to get it first. Again, I was still training, but ended up doing all of the customer interactions when we worked together because he was such a pill. A month or two later, he tries to tell me I had to be at our job site at 5 a.m. on a Thursday because he had football tickets and wanted to wrap up early. I told him he was welcome to start at 5, but I was showing up at a regular time because that's what our point of contact asked us to do. He just said, "We'll see," and drove off. Next morning, I let him know I was on my way, and he blew up. I'm talking unhinged, racist comments with some physical threats sprinkled in. Best part, he texted it all to me on our work phones. Slam dunk, HR complained. I got the next 2 days off fully paid, and he wasn't with the company when I came back to work the next Monday. Later, I learned that he was dealing with some serious personal issues and had been put on the new antidepressants, which explains some things and kind of made me feel for the guy. But come on, man. Next story. I traveled with a woman, often over several years. We work in the same industry, and though our personalities never fully aligned, we got along well enough until the time she showed up to a work conference after she went to a past life psychic. Apparently, the psychic told her that she had previously lived freely in Africa, was captured and sold into slavery. She, a middle-class, middle-aged white lady, described in illustrative detail her experience on the slave ship across the Atlantic, the oppression and how it affects her life today. And she'd talk about it whenever she had an opening in a conversation. We haven't communicated since. Next story. My brother started dating this girl last year and invited me and my boyfriend to their new home they moved into. She revealed that her mom and my mom went to the same high school and cheered on the same team. I said something along the lines of, "That's awesome. Maybe my mom could have a new friend her age." She immediately replied by saying, "Your mom will never have any friends." I was stunned by what she said and looked at my boyfriend like, Did she really just say that? I stopped going to anything she invited me to after that and actively tried to avoid her. Next story. My friend died this past fall. They'd had a horrible relationship with their mom, and I had heard for years from the friend and their sibling how terrible their mom was. But given that I had never met her, I was still going to, cautiously, give her the benefit of the doubt when I met her at his funeral. She was wearing essentially a wedding dress. Super fancy, fully white dress with a plunging neckline almost to her belly button. Boobs out, to her child's funeral. I still introduced myself and was kind to her, but one look at her told me that everything her children had told me about her was true. Next story. I'm a public school teacher. I had a colleague at my previous school site who was notorious for being a Trumper, anti-vaxxer, moon-landing denier, etc. The guy was also a history teacher too, so... That being said, I highly value maintaining a cordial and professional relationship with all of my colleagues while at work, so I occasionally would find myself chatting with this guy on the way out of meetings and stuff like that. I actually found him to be friendly enough in our interactions. We both enjoy baseball, among other things, whatever. Well, one day we were discussing something about admin wanting us to reduce fail rates among students, or something to that effect, by basically lowering expectations and letting students turn in work whenever they please. If you know, you know. Well, as the meeting is coming to a close and we're venting to each other a little bit, he goes, "Yeah, these kids want everything for free these days, even their school lunches." That was the last time I chatted with him on the way out of a meeting. Next story. At a work convention when the boss lets us know we are sharing a booth with another guy. His first sentence was, "Dang, look at these models. My wife's body became gross to me after the second kid." My coworker and I had to stop him after about 5 minutes to tell him we aren't those kind of guys that bash their wives for getting pregnant with our children. Next story. At a job working with young kids. We worked early mornings, so no one is in the best mood at the beginning of work, but this girl walked up to me as I'm standing in front of a crowd of children and says, "You ever just want to strangle a kid just to make them shut up?" Totally straight-faced. I turned away from the kids and said, "No, what the F is wrong with you?" And she shrugged and went back to work. Next story. Last weekend, I went out for some beers with one of my best friends. I have known him for 22 years, and he is probably one of the smartest and most reflected persons I have ever known. I have, however, over the past year noticed that he has become more and more skeptical to immigration and foreigners in general, and he can bring up the subject in the oddest contexts. My parents migrated from India in the early 1970s and ended up in Norway, so I was born here and have lived here my whole life. I have always considered myself Norwegian first, with an additional cultural background. I have dealt with my share of racism, so I guess I know what it can feel like to be an ethnic minority. Anyway, I pushed him on the immigration subject, and he never had any good answers, except for tabloid headlines backed by no statistics or proof. I tried to reason and said that the lack of arguments doesn't fit with the person I know, given how thoughtful and thought through he normally is. Long story short, the night culminated in him shouting to me that Norway is for Norwegians, followed by silence when I asked him how to define Norwegians. Suddenly, that was the end of 22 years of friendship. Next story. I'm still surprised by white racist males that think you're on their team if you're a white male. I had to meet with a contractor on a construction project in New York. Within 10 minutes, he's already dropped the N-bomb twice. This was 20 years ago. I was in great shape and 6'6". I've always been respectful of others, but also didn't need to put up with a-holes. The next time he tossed out, he got my "you're about to get a soul slapping" kind of look, and I told him that my wife was African American, and I strongly suggested he choose his words carefully. He was absolutely terrified and kept apologizing. I wasn't actually married at all. He was a superintendent for a very large construction management company, and I needed to shut his butt down with no fear of escalation beyond our encounter. He was always polite anytime we spoke on the phone after that. Next story. I was on about the third date outing with a lady I met via a dating app. She was nice enough, no exact chemistry, but I felt like we both enjoyed each other's company. We were still trying to get to know each other's vibe. We go to a local brewery on a beautiful sunny evening and decide to sit outside. I don't remember the exact story I was telling, but it involved the word fart in the story at some point. She stops me and says, "Oh, I don't really like that word." I ask, "What word?" She says, "Fart." I ask, "What else would you say to describe it?" She says, "I prefer using the phrase passing gas." That was the exact instant I knew there was no future potential with said person. Too much of my life's joy revolves around fart humor and farting. No, ma'am. I got some farting to do. Next story. My ex wanted me to be friends with his friend's girlfriend. We hit it off okay, then a few days later she sends me a pic of a beta and says she wants it. I have a background in exotic rescue. I've done it professionally and personally. I explained why getting a fish spontaneously was a bad idea, and it would 100% suffer and likely die. She said she wouldn't, but then guess what? She did. Guess what else? It died 2 days later. I stopped talking to her, but on social media I saw she did the same thing with a scorpion, and it died. Now she got a snake, and I'm just anxiously waiting for the announcement. Next story. This is when I was a teenager. There was a girl who was part of my wider friend group, but we'd never spent time one-on-one before. The first time we do, she starts asking me multiple questions about my disability. I have a prosthetic leg. I don't mind questions as long as they're respectful and aren't the first thing people ask, so I answered her. And it was fine until she said, "I'm just asking because your disability makes me feel so much better about myself." I mentally cut off the friendship there and told some closer friends what happened, but ultimately I wasn't going to cause drama when we had friends in common, so I stayed polite when she was around. The one line I drew was not wanting her at the Halloween party I was throwing a couple of months later. She showed up anyway, and refused to leave when asked by multiple times and multiple people until we gave in. Then she stole my stuff when she left. Next story. This one sucks because he was a very close friend of 15 years. He volunteered to help me move homes because he had a truck, but couldn't at the last minute. He still offered to lend me his truck, and when I went to pick it up, he said, "I know how much gas I have, so make sure you leave it at the same level." We've been friends for 15 years. I've always made sure to be mindful and never even gave a reason, so this comment really threw me off. Things were never really the same again. I returned the truck with extra gas and got him a lunch gift card. Next story. A guy had just started at my job, and it was a day or two after Kobe died, and he was bragging about how he bought a pallet of Kobe Nike shoes right when the news broke before the price went up, and he was going to make a fortune. Felt gross. He also got mad at me for wearing a Star Wars High Republic shirt because it was woke, and gay people being in Star Wars was unbelievable. Female dog, there are psychic powers and aliens, but gay folk are a bridge too far. Whatever, dude. To top it all off, he was just a bad worker. He'd answer the phone, "What do you want?" Next story. So, met some people through my best friend. They seemed nice enough, but one of them came from dirty money, East Asian politics, and was a complete nepo baby, but seemed relatively down to earth. He had added me on Facebook and Snap before we had met. After the first time we met, I did a social media cleaning of people I wasn't really friends with, and since I didn't really know him, I removed him. Apparently that was enough for him, and he went to my best friend calling me all sorts of names because I didn't want him on my social media that I rarely use, and is 99% family. Yeah, never hung out with him again. I should add, we were in our mid-30s. Next story. Was thinking about dating this one girl. I liked her at first, but she started getting clingy, and not like, "Oh, she likes you." I mean, way too clingy. She would get mad when I wouldn't turn my camera on in FaceTime or not call her. She even went as far as to texting my mom when something didn't go her way. I eventually cut ties, saying we could still be friends. Now I'm done. Thoughts? Next story. I had a coworker who invited me to a lunch at a Mexican restaurant. She ordered a Caesar salad, ate the whole thing, then asked if I'd be offended if she didn't pay for it because who puts carrots in Caesar salad? I told her she shouldn't have eaten it if she wasn't going to pay for it. She was also a huge bully to people who were less intelligent. We stopped socializing after that. Then she made a transphobic comment in the break room. I checked her in front of the others and told my supervisor I was done dealing with her at work too. Then her son started stalking me. Next story. He picked a noodle I dropped on the kitchen floor and announced to me, "I'm helping," and without thinking I chortled and said, "Even my toddlers are more helpful." Dude flipped out on his girlfriend on the car ride home that I was disrespectful to his pride. Shut the F up. Don't come back if you need a prize for thinking picking up one dropped noodle is helping me. Next story. I bent down to pet my friend's dog who ran up to me all excited, and his fiance got real weird and questioned me if I asked for consent. She made a big stink about it when I said no, but that this was a dog that ran up to me clearly wanting to be pet. She then asked me if I would go up to another person and start petting them. I said no, because that's a person, and I ended up having to just walk away and stop talking with her because she refused to see the reason. The wild part is that it wasn't even her dog. She was still just the girlfriend of my buddy who hadn't moved in yet. I mean, I think you should ask to pet someone's dog, but if they're also not controlling it to the point that it's running up to strangers, there's not much you can really do. Also, some people have a fear of dogs and may have not given you the consent to let your dog run all up in their business. That being said, can I pet that dog? Next story. Started excitedly telling me about his dream dog, a basset hound. Not a fan of pure race breeding, but I love animals and was ready to gush about how cute they are. Instead, he went on about how adorable it is that they struggle to get around as they age, how their body is basically programmed to cause them pain and mobility issues, which he found incredibly endearing. He said he couldn't wait to buy his own so he could watch him struggle to jump on couches or climb upstairs. It all sounded weirdly psychopathic, and I quickly decided I didn't like this guy at all. Well, that might be one of the most insane things I've ever heard. What do you mean it's endearing to watch something's body shut down on them? You know, if you find old people or old animals cute, sure, great, but actively watching them decline and finding joy in that, it's a little odd. Next story. Went to a friend's party and her sister-in-law accosted me, regaling me with all her qualifications and connections. When she finally asked me a question, it was, "Are you Chinese or Japanese?" When I responded, she said, "You look Japanese. I like Japanese things. Are you sure you're not Japanese?" She lost interest and walked away. I had a lucky escape. Next story. When I was 19, my 18-year-old cousin and a few of his friends paid me to go get alcohol for them from the liquor store. I'd met 3 of them before and we were all buddies, but there was a new guy. The general rule is this: if you give someone money to buy you alcohol or smokes, the buyer keeps the change. That is the price you pay me since you're not yet old enough to buy it yourself. My cousin and the friends of his I'd met were all cool with this, but the last guy, who I'd just met that day and had way too much stupid energy, said no and aggressively argued that I'm not keeping his change. It was going to total like $4 or something, which I just laughed off. I said fine, but that I'm not buying anything for you then. But he insisted I should do it anyway. Still no. He thought he had a choice, which is what bothered me. Instantly hated him for trying to man up and challenge me when I don't have to get anyone anything at all. I had just met him today. Relax, gangster. The rest of us hung out all day, and had a great time, while he just sat in the corner miserable. Next story. Met my sister's friend's girlfriend at a get-together. We were chatting about where we lived, and I live in a bit of an iffy area. High crime rate, some antisocial behavior, etc. I said, "Actually, it's all right. It's just a bit," and paused to find the right word. She interjected with, like the spot the white man?" I was really caught off guard and said, no, just some disruptive people around sometimes, then quickly made an excuse to go somewhere else. Now I wish I'd called her out on her racism, but I was genuinely so surprised. I guess I must live a sheltered life, but it's pretty rare that I come across someone who's so blatant about it. Next story. A friend of mine was an affair partner for a married guy. I didn't know the wife, or I would have told her. It was worse when she told me. I instantly decided I could not be friends with her. Our morals didn't align. Worse yet, I went out to drinks with mutual friends and she was there and just crying how this guy chose his wife again over her. And they were all cussing him and comforting her. I immediately did not want to be friends with any of them either. Next story. Mine was on day one at a new job. A coworker loudly bragged that he tests people by being rude to service staff because if they still smile, they're weak. That told me everything in about 10 seconds. You can fake charm with peers, but the way you treat people who can't push back is the real personality test. Next story. I work at a local game store, and one of my regulars that I had good rapport with started trying to convince my coworkers to a community largely known for screeching about LGBT folks in the hobby, because this is a kids game, defending having hentai on card sleeves and playmats, and melting down about some Lord of the Rings characters being depicted as anything but lily white. I flippantly made a comment about it being a board full of Nazis and incels, and he starts ranting about the people of Dearborn, a famously majority Muslim city for some reason. Next story. My first week of college, my roommate asked me about my religion. When I said I was an atheist, she immediately asked me if it was because I essayed. For the record, I was not essayed and had never said anything to her about my sexual history. She had no reason to think I was essayed. She just assumed that the only reason I wouldn't believe in God is if something had happened to me that would make me mad at the world. Next story. I offered to buy her a concert ticket for an artist we both loved since she was dealing with a bunch of medical bills and the tickets were fairly cheap. She refused my offer and notably did not thank me for offering. A few days later, the concert sold out and she posted all over social media that she's so unlucky for missing out to a garner sympathy and attention. Next story. We had a couples date with our kids' friends' parents, trying to make new friends in the school when our daughter was in kindergarten. I crap you not, the wife brought every single topic of conversation back to her church and Jesus, every single one. She could not read the vibe and pick up that we had zero interest in discussing her church or Jesus. It was an instant friendship killer, even before it started. Disclaimer, I firmly think everyone has a right to believe what they want in terms of their religion, but I swear it was unbearable. Next story. Oh, I met a neighbor a bit ago while out on a walk. Our dogs got along great. I ran into him again and we started chatting. He remembered that I mentioned we have our first kid on the way. The guy is allegedly a nutritionist. He told me all about how we shouldn't vaccinate our kid and that the hospital was going to try and steal our baby's umbilical cord to sell the stem cells. I'll be a friendly neighbor, but I walk fast by their house and don't stop to chat anymore. Next story. Had a coworker back when I worked nights at a convenience store, and his first day he refused to do any cleaning at all, saying it was women's work and that we as men shouldn't have to do it. Knew right then we wouldn't get along. He also refused to stock the cooler because it was too cold and wouldn't scan in any deliveries. No reason given for that last one, he just wouldn't do it. But I didn't find out those until later shifts. Hated working with him. Next story. My college ex-boyfriend's roommate met a girl, and naturally we ended up double dating for a weekend. It seemed natural that we could try and become friends, since our BFs were best friends. I don't remember why, but she showed me a photo of this girl who had what she said was the ugliest baby she's ever seen and was laughing about it. The baby had a developmental disorder, and the young mom had been posting about their journey through the NICU to home. I didn't speak a single word to her for the rest of the weekend. Later that night, the four of us smoked something together, and I fresh-baked cookies in the apartment, and I didn't share with her. Next story. The only thing that's hard about being a white male in the US is other white men just assume you think the same way that they do. Met a guy at a bar and just started casually talking about our jobs and whatnot. He had a cool corgi that was loving my pets and such. I go to leave, and he takes off his jacket, revealing a pro wrestling shirt. I love wrestling, so proceed to stay and chat more. Thought, hey, I've made a new friend. After a few minutes, he starts bringing up how DEI is ruining everything, and he can't even make jokes to women anymore. Usual incel right-wing garbage. I tell him this was cool, but I'm done and leaving. He starts getting erratic, saying, "Sit back down, I'll buy you a beer and we'll talk all about it." I laughed and said, "Nah, dude, I'm out." I learned later no one in the neighborhood likes him. I frequent this place now and haven't seen him since. I refuse to have a discussion with people who already made up their mind. Next story. My wife bonded with a woman at work for a bit. I always thought she came on way too strong. It was just a feeling. She met someone at a party we had and was all over him. He was an average dude and I think caught off guard at being so chaste. Too long didn't read, she forced him to propose. Ultimatum dropped in about 3 months, and the putz did it. We missed the wedding due to a long friend's wedding conflict, but when I saw the photos, my first comment was, "I don't know you had a twin brother, Mike." Mike looked at me and said quietly, "I don't. That's her uncle." That wasn't even what did it for me. I mean, weird, yes, but I'm not going to cut someone off because they were abused, obviously. What got me was going out to dinner, her having a couple, and on the walk in the car deciding to expand on her very racist beliefs, replete with some N-bombs. Adios, and never again. Next story. Long friendship that ended in one day. A woman I knew for over a decade was committed for trying to unalive herself. Again, picked her up along with her boyfriend and his son and then spent hours cleaning her depression mess. Some weeks later, she texts me the first thing in the morning to say the boyfriend is abusive, that she's in danger, he won't leave, etc. I text back and forth with her all day, concerned. She doesn't feel safe but refuses to leave, accept support, or call the police. Eventually, she stops answering, and I'm nervous for her. I end up talking with her cousin, a family doctor, and we come up with a plan for me to go check on her with mimosas to invite her to come watch the sunset. I get there, and she refuses to come out, so I go up to the roof and watch the sunset by myself. The boyfriend comes out and tells me that she is angry I'm there and wants me to leave. He tells me she has been raging and wants to self-unalive all day. We talk for a few minutes and then walk downstairs to the grocery store together, with me still pretty suspicious all around of him and her. While we're downstairs, she calls him and says his 6-year-old kid has hit his head in the bathroom and is bleeding profusely. She screams at him over the phone that he abandoned his child, that he's a horrible father, a horrible parent, a horrible person for leaving them alone while she is wanting to self-unalive. He said she was upset at me, but stable enough when we left. We both basically sprint back up to the apartment. This girl was in my wedding and had been a close friend for years. I was genuinely worried about them. When we get up there, the door flies open and she starts screaming at the boyfriend everything she said on the phone. The little boy is peeking out from behind her, smiling, not bleeding, and is otherwise visually fine. Then she sees me and starts shouting, "Get out, you effing stalker! How dare you try to turn him against me!" In between a bunch of insults, she tells me she is going to call the police, so I leave, bewildered, confused, and deeply unsure of what to do. After I leave, she starts sending me text after text about what a horrible friend I am for trying to convince her boyfriend to leave her, for violating her privacy, for trying to take her child from her. They'd been dating less than 6 months. They keep coming for hours, and I do respond, telling her I know she's in pain and that I'm sorry she felt that's what I was doing, but that I must have misunderstood the severity of what she said was going on. She keeps going, escalates, and gets even meaner and more unhinged. Eventually, I tell her that I don't think it is helping to keep talking like this, and let her know I'm going to stop responding. She keeps going. I block her because, at this point, I can't. Then, she starts texting my husband, who I was separated from, what a terrible person I am, saying she understood why we were separated. He and I were close and remained friends, so he reached out to me immediately to check on what was going on, telling me what she was saying. I never unblocked her, and we never spoke again. She's still dating the same guy, she remained unemployed, and they both look terrible. Next story. Met a couple while spending time with another friend couple. They seemed nice. She was a former nurse. While talking about natural remedies, a subject I thoroughly enjoy as a hobby, She mentioned a program she had learned about where one could get a certification for natural medicine, but she clarified that it required a bachelor's degree as a prerequisite. I have a degree, and I was truly interested in the program, not for the certification but for the knowledge. I asked if the degree had to be medical. She said no, which got me very interested and continued to talk about it. I asked a lot of questions about it and started pulling it up on my phone and was oohing and eyeing over the course descriptions. She's continued talking about it, but also continued to drop in, "But you have to have a bachelor's degree," about every third sentence. Now, I'm not a flashy person. One might say I'm frugal. I don't buy a new thing while the old thing is still working well. I wear inexpensive clothes, but good quality shoes. At the same time, I was driving a cheap, beat-up-looking, stupid deer, but very mechanically sound and very paid-for vehicle. So about the fourth time she dropped that bachelor's degree caveat in, after I'd already brushed it aside a couple of times to let her know I heard her, I finally interrupted her and said, "Respectfully, you keep mentioning the bachelor's degree requirement. You seem to think I don't have one, so let me clear that up. I have my bachelor's of science in business." She looked surprised, got a little red-faced, and said, "Oh." The husband ended up sticking his foot in his mouth with our friends later that evening after we left. Straight up called our friend a liar when he was sharing a personal anecdote. Just blurted out, "You're a liar!" So strange. Never saw those judgy people ever again. Next story. I met up with a girl on Bumble BFF. We were both living in the same city and moved from Southern California. I thought it'd be nice to become friends with someone who's familiar with home and is going through the same experience of moving. I thought we'd get along great since we're the same age, lived in the exact same cities, albeit at different times, and now live in the same city. It's like we have the exact same life path. The conversation quickly turned into her talking crap about the politics in California. I only moved because I'm broke. While I do keep up with politics, I never really considered politics before moving. Plus, we live in a purple state with a Democrat governor. It's not like it's a Republican paradise here. Then she started talking about how she met her husband during a mission and then got married after 8 months and then told me, "Yeah, I guess it takes some people time to figure out how to get married." When I told her my husband and I got married after 6 years of being together, she asked, by the way, and that's when I realized we are definitely never going to be friends. Next story. I had a friend who I would hang out with because our kids went to the same school. We went to the gym together, and she had always been very athletic. I have never been athletic, but I was trying. We went to the gym together 3 days a week, and I was really proud of myself. I have trauma that happened at the gym when I was a teenager, so going to the gym is already difficult for me. This guy came up to us while I was using one of those machines that a lot of older people use. Basically, you cannot do the exercise wrong because each machine does one specific thing. He was heavily flirting with me, and she was married. He looked at me and told me that I will never lose weight doing exercises like this. Mind you, I wasn't a huge girl. I was probably a little overweight, but not by a lot. I told him I do not recall ever asking his opinion on the matter. I looked at her, waiting for her to stand up for me, but she agreed with him. I was almost in tears at this point, and I decided to leave. I never saw her the same way after that. My husband has never liked her, and after that incident, I have learned to trust my husband's gut. Next story. Became friends with a goth girl at work who was pretty chill and decided to hang out with her. She wanted to sell some cards and I drove her to the card shop and decided to pull out a cigarette of some sort and light it in my car without asking and with the window still up. I forgave her for it. Was a huge pushover then. And the next time I hung out with her, she asked if I could bring a cake she ordered for her boyfriend's birthday and I obliged, thinking she already paid for it. And when I went in, the lady said it needed to be paid for. Surprised and annoyed, I called her and asked why the F she hadn't paid for the cake and said she'd pay me back for it with the card she sold, so I begrudgingly foot the $30 cake bill, and when I went to her place and celebrated her boyfriend's birthday, I asked for reimbursement and she handed me $15 and said it's only fair. I left and blocked her. Next story. I was on a work trip to a hotel hot tub reading a book. Some random lady struck up a conversation and she was mildly nuts, talking about how much her husband sucks and how lazy he is. She wants to leave him, but won't. Anyways, she invites me up to the rooftop bar and I of course say yes. Gotta do it for the plot, right? Anyways, now we're into our conversation. She brings up J.K. Rowling and how she's doing so much for women and everyone else is being a hater. No other book series compares to Harry Potter, and she compares all her books to it and wants a spicy version. Excuse me, what? I got up and left approximately 10 minutes after that convo, finished my expensive drink that she bought me. I knew she was nuts, but yeah, I'm not entertaining a transphobe any longer. Also, grow up. There's other books out there. Like, come on, move on. Anyways, next story. My brother introduced my sister and I to an older white couple who owned a store on a lake near his house. Within 2 minutes of us arriving, they were using the N-word and talking bad about minorities. My sister and I, both white, were shocked and livid. We looked at each other and immediately went outside. When our sister-in-law came out to see what was up, we asked her how our brother could be friends with such uncouth, ignorant, racist people, especially since she is Hispanic. She said she didn't know. He could tell we were all upset, and we left shortly thereafter. It was not going to be a friendly barbecue at the lake that day, or ever. Years later, I found out that he was drinking buddies with this couple, and the guy ended up in jail for something like fraud or stolen identity. Alcoholism and racism makes people do and say such awful things. Next story. First time meeting this dude in a group setting at a restaurant. I invited another one of my friends to the dinner, and he happens to sit across from this dude on a long table. I got an earshot of their conversation. My friend, very smart guy and expert in this particular field of conversation. The other dude multiple times goes on, "Actually, you are wrong because," and none of those facts were cited or relevant directly. Only took my friend 10 minutes to shoot me the "I need to leave" look after sitting down. Never felt that bad for inviting a friend to a social event to meet new people. Next story. Bro got my name wrong. I corrected him. He said it right. Great. Not 10 minutes later, he starts saying it wrong again. I bring it up. He apologizes, and he says his accent makes it difficult. I say no sweat. I gave him a word that sounded similar. He said it again. Just say it like that, but with a different first letter, right? Again, not 10 minutes later, he starts messing my name up again. Can't take a guy seriously when he says your name wrong. Pretty much a 20-minute turnaround from let's be friends to I don't like speaking with you anymore. Yes, I've experienced something similar. For some reason, people just can't say Tristan right. I always get Justin or Christian. It's fine though, it's cool. I guess it's different if you feel like they're being blatantly disrespectful and trying to say it wrong. But anyways, guys, that concludes our stories of the absolute fastest way you've realized, hey, this ain't gonna work out. And if you have any stories that you feel like you would like to share, feel free to drop those down below, because of course we like reading them. We've all got wicked stories, we've all got people we don't get along with. Hopefully that's not the case with you and I. Hey, I get along with you. I hope you get along with me. Hopefully you're not listening to this and going, yeah, I definitely don't want to be friends with this guy. But if so, I understand. But anyways, guys, thanks for hanging out with me. And of course, we will see you in the next one. Okay, bye.